Hey, listen, today we're cooking with coffee here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck, and welcome to the Obis Lab. Hey, listen, today we're using coffee for food. We're making a coffee dry rub. You know, like for a steak or for barbecue, something like that. And although this isn't really a Father's Day episode, it's a great gift idea for Father's Day. So, let me just go ahead and get started here. You're going to need a bowl of some kind, and you're going to need an array of spices. We'll go through that in just a moment. You need a teaspoon and a tablespoon, and you need something to stir and mix the spices with. But the key ingredient here, of course, is coffee. And the way we're going to start this off is with about a half a cup of coffee, and I've pre-measured some coffee already. I've got whole bean right here. Now, you could use pre-ground, that would be fine. And maybe you wouldn't want to use the most expensive coffee because all these spices are going to get infused into that coffee. You know, the one thing about coffee is that it's hygroscopic. It'll absorb all the flavors. As a matter of fact, if you were to put this coffee in your fridge, it would act like baking soda and take all the odors out of your fridge. But I think baking soda is a lot cheaper to do that with. Now, we like using fresh ground coffee almost always, so let me go ahead and get that ground up here. And I've already pre-measured a half a cup. And we're going to grind it, except we're not going to grind it because I've already ground a half a cup so that we didn't have to listen to the grinder and that kind of thing. But we're going to get that coffee right in the bowl. And this is the largest and main ingredient. All right, we're going to run through a series of additions to this coffee here that's going to give a really robust flavor to this dry rub. And we're going to start off with sugar. Believe it or not, sugar is a great addition to a dry rub because it assists with caramelization when you cook it. Salt.
Hey babe, how much sugar did you put in?
Oh, 2 tablespoons, and thanks for the reminder. And we're going to go with 2 tablespoons of salt, just regular table salt. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of paprika. And paprika is a great coloring agent. And there's a little sweetness to it also, just like the sugar. We're going to go 2 tablespoons of pepper. And that's for a little bit of spice and kick. Now we're going to downgrade in terms of the quantity. These were all 2 tablespoons. This was half a cup of coffee. But now we're going to go to our onion powder and do 2 teaspoons of onion powder. And these are savory components, right? And 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. All right. Our next ingredient, of course, is, well, I say of course, coriander, which I don't even know what coriander is. Do you know what coriander is?
Coriander is cilantro.
Cilantro seeds or?
I think it's like baby cilantro, but I'm not, I'm not sure.
But again, another savory component in there. And then this one you would never guess, but it's perfect complement to coffee. We know that. We've used it in other things. But it's 2 teaspoons of cocoa powder. And then, of course, we have 1 teaspoon of mustard. And look how pretty all these layers are. Now, this right here is a great base, right? So we could be finished as soon as we blend it up a little bit. And we do want it to be fully blended. A whisk works best in this scenario. But after you get your base, and you could cook with this base as I mentioned before, but you might decide you want to take it in a different direction. Now the direction that I like to go is heat or spice. And for that I've got a little chili pepper and a little cayenne pepper, right? So that would be spice. You could go in an Asian direction. You could do a little lemongrass and ginger. That's another possibility. But I've got to get these in, and we would go back up to 2 teaspoons total of spice in here. And I'm going to go tablespoons, sorry. 1 tablespoon of cayenne. Well, it's not an exact science. And 1 tablespoon of the chipotle seasoning. And this will definitely give this a hot kick. There's no doubt about it. So let me go ahead and continue to blend this up a little bit. Or, you know, I say a little bit, really it needs to be a lot. All right. Now, if you're just going to use this at home at this point, you could take a shaker. You can see I've already got some in here. And just fill up your shaker for this dry rub. Or if you were intending to make this more of a gift item, you might save an old spice shaker. I have some new ones here, and fill up a spice shaker so that you could present it as a gift item, you know, like for Father's Day. And you'll need a little short funnel for that to get all that in. Perfect. And, you know, if you wanted to make this a Father's Day gift, maybe you would even do more than one of these. It's not like, hey, here, Dad, thanks for everything you did. I've put a little box together just like this, and pretty straightforward. I would just lay in the last one right here, right? And wouldn't that make a nice Father's Day gift? Oh, well, actually, you might want to add something like a Father's Day mug. This one says, Best Dad Ever, right? And has a BIGGBY Coffee logo. It's a very handsome mug. These, of course, are available on BIGGBY.com. All right, we're going to take a short pause here because I'm going to show you actually how to use a coffee dry rub. We're going to go through the cycle of cooking with it, and we're going to learn a little bit more why a dry rub is better than a marinade. See you in a minute. All right, we're back, and we're going to actually go through the motions of using a coffee rub. And we're going to use a pork chop, but you could use any cut of meat. It could be beef, it could be a ribeye, it could be a tenderloin. You can use this for a roast. I mean, I think Michelle was saying you could use it for street corn. You could shake it on potatoes. All those things are true, but we're going to look at it in its most traditional sense. So I'm going to grab a pork chop, but you know, one thing when you're cooking meat, whether it's out on the grill or on the stovetop, the one thing you always want to do is get your meat as dry as possible and take as much moisture out of the meat, of the surface of the meat. And that's why I go ahead and pat that down a little bit with a piece of paper towel. Now, proportions for a dry rub, you put on dry rub until it can't take any more dry rub. That's the answer, right? So, and it might be a little bit messy, but the idea is just start shaking, right? Shake, 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 shake. And it's going to be messy because you got to get your hands in there in the end. There's no doubt about it. You kind of want to push it in and rub it around the sides and that kind of thing. So get it thoroughly. I'm going to shake the other side. And of course, when I'm done shaking, I'm going to rub it in again, just like that. They don't call it coffee rub for nothing. It's because you gotta rub the meat a little bit. And it should be very saturated. And so even here in the end, I can see that most of it has been absorbed, but I'm going to give it one last kick. And from here, we want to take it and put it in the refrigerator. And the way I like to do that is to put it on a rack just like this. And these two have been sitting in the fridge for some time now. And when this one sits in the fridge for a while, you'll see this color change too. So the spices and the coffee, they actually get absorbed into the surface.
I have a question, babe.
Yeah, right.
Do you leave it in the refrigerator uncovered?
I keep it uncovered because we're actually looking for some dehydration there, right? So if you ever heard of dry aged beef or something like that, that's kind of what we're doing on a very short-term basis. Now, the minimum amount I would do this is for about an hour, but technically you could do it the day before. And what will protect the meat is this layer of spice and so on, right? So, but once you've refrigerated it and it's dry aged, what will happen is you'll want to cook it. And in this particular case, we're going to cook it in a pan. And I'm trying to do this without burning myself.
Yikes, don't do
Yeah,
this
it
at
looks a little
home.
dangerous, right? But remember, we could do this on an outdoor grill. We can do this in a pan. I'm doing it in a pan because we're here in the studio. And it's really hot in Michigan here today. And I'm just going to put about a tablespoon of oil in. And I like to use peanut oil. That's what this one happens to be, no particular brand. I like to use peanut oil because it has a high smoke point, right? So when we won't see a lot of smoke, acrid smoke come off of this, even though the pan has been heating here for a bit, right? So I had my pan heating while I was talking. Now I'm letting the oil heat up a little bit. And I know when the oil is ready when I see a little bit of shimmering going on in the pan. So I'm going to grab one of my refrigerated pork chops here and lay that right in.
Oh, that's a nice
You hear
sizzle.
that sizzle? You might want to get in and take a look at that. But while you're doing that, I got to move some things around. But I like to use a pair of tongs for this. So you want your pan and your oil both to be hot. And you know, the thing about a marinade and the difference between a marinade and a dry rub is a dry rub gives you a nice crust on your meat. And it actually seals the flavor in. A marinade just adds moisture to it, right? And think about it. We try to take all the moisture out, and we're trying to dry this out in the fridge and so on and so forth. Meat is a little bit better when you get the extra moisture out. And a dry rub contributes no extra moisture, right? And it's one of the things that makes it really taste good, obviously all the spices and so on, but also gives it that really nice, good crust. You might want to move it around in your pan a little bit and keep finding some new hot spots. This pan isn't the hottest pan in the world, but we're going to make it work anyway. So what would happen here is you'd want to cook this, a piece of meat about this size. You'd want to cook it 2 or 3 minutes per side on a hot pan. That also would apply if you were barbecuing outside. And once we felt we got a good crust on one side here, we would turn it over. Now, just before I would turn it over, I'm going to have you come in for this a little bit closer, babe. I would actually add a pat of butter and let that melt a little bit. And then as I turn it over, and you can see there's a really nice crust coming up on that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually baste with that butter and the oil right on top. So it's almost like I'm cooking on both sides, right? Well, you guys don't need to see me sit here and cook this meat. I think you've got the idea. First side 3 minutes, flip it over. Second side 3 minutes, baste with a little butter and so on. So I'm going to let this sit off to the side and continue to cook. Now what I have done is I've already cooked one ahead of time. And actually we did it just before the episode got started. And you can see that nice crust. And I don't know if you can get in here, babe, and let folks see that. Now, I had some juices come off from the meat. And in the end, you can take those very juices and put them right on top. They'll sort of absorb right in. But what I've done here is not just cooked a piece of meat in advance. I'm doing something that you should do when you take your steak off the grill or off the pan. You should let it rest, right? And you should let it rest for somewhere around 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. But when you let meat rest, what happens is the juices come back in. If we were to cut this open right away, the risk we would have is all the juices would run right out. But the question is, does this taste good? Now you have to keep in mind, this isn't just some recipe we came up with. Michelle and I have tried, I think it was about 50 different combinations until we came up with this perfect one.
At least 50.
At least 50. Now, as stated earlier, we do like our meat a little bit spicy, and so this is the spicy version. But I'm going to go ahead and slice this open for you so you can get an idea of what that looks like. And it's very, I don't know if you can see that, but it's very juicy. But what I'm going to do is have Michelle give it the old testaroo.
Yahoo!
And there you go, babe.
Thanks, honey.
Woo-woo.
Okay, I'm going to take a bite. I hope you don't hear me chewing.
Oh my God. You know, I know we've had this over and over again, but every time I have it, I'm really amazed. It tastes so good. Well, that's how you use a coffee rub. That's how you use coffee for cooking. And that's what we're all about here on One Big Island Space. Is we love the discovery of coffee. We love Farm Direct. And we just want to say happy Father's Day to the fathers out there. But let me leave you with this one thing. You might want to give us some feedback, or you might want to like, or you might want to hit the subscribe button. But the real thing that I want to leave with you is when you love the world will love you right back. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by OneBigIslandInspace.com with 2 G's.